resist, but obey the impulse. Then ask your subject to rise the head high and shut his eyes, and place your right fist on the back of his neck, and your left hand on his forehead, and say to him, "Now think, I am falling backwards, I am falling backwards," etc., etc. And indeed, you are falling backwards, you are falling backwards. At the same time, slide the left hand lightly backwards to the left temple above the ear, and remove very slowly, but with a continuous movement, the right fist. The subject is immediately felt to make a slight movement backwards, and either to stop himself from falling, or else to fall completely. In the first case, tell him that he has resisted, and that he did not think just what he was feeling, but that he might hurt himself if he did fall. That is true, for if he had thought the latter, he would have fallen like a block. Repeat the experiment using a tone or command, as if you would force the subject to obey you. Go on with it until it is completely successful, or very nearly so. The operator should stand a little behind the subject, the left leg forward and the right leg well behind him, so as not to be knocked over by the subject when he falls. Neglect of this precaution might result in a double fall if the person is heavy. Third experiment. Place the subject facing you, the body still stiff and ankles flexible, and the feet joined in parallel. Put your two hands on his temples without any pressure. Look fixedly, without moving the eyelids, at the root of his nose and tell him to think, "I am falling forward, I am falling forward," and repeat to him, stressing the syllables, "You are falling forward, you are falling forward," without ceasing to look fixedly at him. Fourth experiment. Ask the subject to clasp his hands as tight as possible, that is to say, until the fingers tremble slightly. Look at him in the same way as in the preceding experiment, and keep your hands on his as though to squeeze them together still more tightly. Tell him to think that he cannot unclasp his fingers, that you are going to count 3, and that when you say 3, he is to try to separate his hands while thinking all the time, "I cannot do it, I cannot do it," and he will find it impossible. Then count slowly, 1, 2, 3, and add immediately, detaching the syllables, "You cannot do it, you cannot do it." If the subject is thinking properly, "I cannot do it," not only is he unable to separate his fingers, but the latter clasp themselves all the more tightly together, the more effort he makes to separate them. He obtains, in fact, exactly the contrary to what he wants. In a few moments say to him, "Now think, I can do it," and his fingers will separate themselves. Be careful always to keep your eyes fixed on the root of the subject's nose, and do not allow him to turn his eyes away from yours for a single moment. If he is able to unclasp his hands, do not think it is your own fault. It is the subject's. He has not properly thought, "I cannot." Assure him firmly of this, and begin the experiment again. Always use a tone of command which suffers no disobedience. I do not mean that it is necessary to raise your voice. On the contrary, it is preferable to employ the ordinary pitch, but stress every word in a dry and imperative tone. When these experiments have been successful, all the others succeed equally well, and can be easily obtained by carrying out to the letter the instructions given above. Some subjects are very sensitive, and it is easy to recognize them by the fact that the contraction of their fingers and limbs is easily produced. After 2 or 3 successful experiments, it is no longer necessary to say to them, "Think this or think that." You need only, for example, say to them simply, but in the imperative tone employed by all good suggestionists, "Close your hands, now you cannot open them. Shut your eyes, now you cannot open them." And the subject finds it absolutely impossible to open the hands or the eyes in spite of all his efforts. Tell him in a few moments, "You can do it now," and the decontraction takes place instantaneously. These experiments can be verified to infinity. Here are a few more. Make the subject join his hands and suggest that they are welded together. Make him put his hand on the table and suggest that it is stuck to it. Tell him that he is fixed to his chair and cannot rise. Make him rise and tell him he cannot walk. Put a pen holder on the table and tell him that it weighs 100 weight and that he cannot lift it, etc. In all these experiments, I cannot repeat too often, it is not suggestion properly so-called which produces the phenomena, but the autosuggestion which is consecutive to the suggestion of the operator. When the subject has passed through the preceding experiments and has understood them, he is ripe for curative suggestion. He is like a cultivated field in which the seed can germinate and develop, whereas before it was but rough earth in which it would have perished. Whatever ailment the subject suffers from, whether it is physical or mental, it is important to proceed always in the same way, and to use the same words with a few variations according to the case. Say to the subject, sit down and close your eyes. I am not going to try and put you to sleep, as it is quite unnecessary. I ask you to close your eyes simply in order that your attention may not be distracted by the objects around you. Now tell yourself that every word I say is going to fix itself in your mind and be printed, engraved, and encrusted in it. That there it is going to stay fixed, imprinted, and encrusted, and that without your will or knowledge. In fact, perfectly unconsciously on your part, you yourself and your whole organisms are going to obey. In the first place, I say that every day, 3 times a day, in the morning, midday, and in the evening, at all the usual meal times, you will feel hungry. That is to say, you will experience the agreeable sensation which makes you think and say, oh, how nice it will be to have something to eat. You will then eat and enjoy your food, without of course overeating. You will also be careful to masticate it properly so as to transform it into a sort of soft paste before swallowing it. In these conditions, you will digest it properly, and so feel no discomfort, inconvenience, or pain of any kind, either in the stomach or intestine. You will assimilate what you eat, and your organism will make use of it to make blood, muscle, strength, and energy, in a word, life. Since you will have digested your food properly, the function of excretion will be normal, and every morning on rising, you will feel the need of excavating the bowels, and without ever being obliged to take medicine or to use any artifice, you will obtain a normal and satisfactory result. Further, every night from the time you wish to go to sleep till the time you wish to wake in the morning, you will sleep deeply, calmly, and quietly, without nightmares, and on waking you will feel perfectly well, cheerful, and active. Likewise, if you occasionally suffer from depression, if you are gloomy and prone to worry and look on the dark sides of things, from now on onwards you will cease to do so. And instead of worrying and being depressed and looking on the dark side of things, you are going to feel perfectly cheerful, possibly without any special reason for it, just as you used to feel depressed for no particular reason. I say further still that even if you have real reason to be worried and depressed, you are not going to be so. If also are subject to occasional fits of impatience or ill temper, you will cease to have them. On the contrary, you will always be patient and master of yourself, and the things which worried, annoyed, or irritated you will henceforth leave you absolutely indifferent and perfectly calm. If you are sometimes attacked, pursued, haunted by bad and unwholesome ideas, by apprehensions, fears, aversions, temptations, or grudges against other people, all that will gradually lose sight of your imagination and will melt away and lose itself as though in a distant cloud, where it will finally disappear completely, as a dream vanishes when we wake. So will all these vain images disappear. To this I add that all your organs are performing their functions properly. The heart beats in a normal way, and the circulation of the blood takes place as it should. The lungs are carrying out their functions, also the stomach, the intestines, the liver, the biliary duct, the kidneys, and the bladder. If at the present moment any of them is acting abnormally, that abnormality is becoming less every day, so that quite soon it will have vanished completely, and the organ will have recovered its normal function. Furthermore, if there should be any lesions in any of these organs, they will get better from day to day and will soon be entirely healed. With regard to this, I may say that it is not necessary to know which organ is affected for it to be cured. Under the influence of autosuggestion, every day, in every respect, I am getting better and better. The unconsciousness acts upon the organ, which it can pick out itself. I must also add, and it is extremely important, that up to the present you have lacked self-confidence in yourself. I tell you that this self-distrust will disappear little by little and give place to self-confidence based on the knowledge of this force of incalculable power which is in each of us. It is absolutely necessary for every human being to have this confidence. Without it, one can accomplish nothing. With it, one can accomplish whatever one likes. You are then going to have confidence in yourself, and this confidence gives you the assurance that you are capable of accomplishing perfectly well whatever you wish to do, on the condition that it is reasonable, and whatever it is your duty to do. So when you wish to do something reasonable, or when you have a duty to perform, always think that it is easy, and make the words difficult, impossible, I cannot, it is stronger than I cannot prevent myself, from disappear from your vocabulary. They are not English. What is English is, it is easy and I can. By considering the things easy, it becomes so for you. Although it might seem difficult to others, you will do quickly and well and without fatigue, because you do it without effort. Whereas if you have considered it as difficult or impossible, it would have become so for you, simply because you have thought it so. To these general suggestions, which will perhaps seem long and even childish to some of you, but which are necessary, must be added those which apply to the particular case of the patient you are dealing with. All of these suggestions must be made in a monotonous and soothing voice, always emphasizing the essential words, which, although it does not actually send the subject to sleep, at least makes him feel drowsy and think of nothing in particular. When you have come to the end of the series of suggestions, you address the subject in these terms. In short, I mean that from every point of view, physical as well as mental, you are going to enjoy excellent health. Better health than that you've been able to enjoy up to the present. Now I am going to count 3. And when I say 3, you will open your eyes and come out of the passive state in which you are now. You will come out of it quite naturally, without feeling in the least drowsy or tired. On the contrary, you will feel strong, vigorous, alert, active, full of life. Further still, you will feel very cheerful and fit in every way. 1, 2, 3. At the word 3, the subject opens his eyes, always with a smile and an expression of well-being and contentment on his face. Sometimes, though rarely, the patient is cured on the spot. At other times, and this is more generally the case, he will find himself relieved. His pain or his depression has partially or totally disappeared, though only for a certain lapse of time. In every case, it is necessary to renew the suggestion more or less frequently according to your subject, being careful always to space them out a number of longer intervals, according to the progress obtained, until they are no longer necessary. That is to say, when the cure is complete. Before sending away your patient, you must tell him that he carries within him the instrument by which he can cure himself, and that you are, as it were, only a professor teaching him to use this instrument, and that he must help you in your task. Thus, every morning before rising and every night on getting into bed, he must shut his eyes and in thought transport himself into your presence, and then repeat 20 times consecutively in a monotonous voice, counting by a means of string with 20 knots in it, this little phrase: every day in every respect, I am getting better and better. In his mind, he should emphasize the words "in every respect," which applies to every need, mental or physical. This general suggestion is more effective than special ones. Thus, it is easy to realize the part played by the giver of the suggestions. He is not a master who gives orders, but a friend, a guide who leads the patient step by step on the road to health. As all suggestions are given in the interest of the patient, the unconsciousness of the latter resist, but obey the impulse. Then ask your subject to rise the head high and shut his eyes, and place your right fist on the back of his neck, and your left hand on his forehead, and say to him, "Now think, I am falling backwards, I am falling backwards," etc., etc. And indeed, you are falling backwards, you are falling backwards. At the same time, slide the left hand lightly backwards to the left temple above the ear, and remove very slowly, but with a continuous
8 or 9 or 10 minutes. And I'm going to take you on a journey if you'll come along. And yeah, we'll talk about it on the other side.